Ari Katz for his stamina and his spirit that enriches our lives with the very wonderful presentations like this morning's. I am one of those participants who still needs to go and read your books, Dorit. I am honored to have this opportunity to have us meet Dorit Rabinyan, and she is a writer with a capital W in that she has written a collection of poems, Cain, 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 Yes, Yes, Yes. She has written 3 novels, and she has now been involved in writing for television. In that regard, she sits in her room, as she shared a moment ago, and creates worlds. And it's delightful to enter into your room by Zoom. One little thought, my wife Linda and I have watched all 9 of the episodes of Tehran, which is on Amazon Plus. This next week, the final one will be released, and we're hooked on its tension and also on its description of being a Israeli woman, the star being known as Tamar Rabinyan. And Dorit shared with me when I asked her about Tehran, the TV series, that the creator, Moshe Zander, is a friend, and surprised and honored her by naming the heroine of that riveting series with her last name. So that means you are larger than life in all kinds of ways. And it's a treat to have you, to Dorit, with us, the real Rabinyan, Dorit Rabinyan.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Thank you so much, Ali, and everyone who's attending, wherever you are, we're doomed to be capsulized anyhow. So let's unify in thoughts and minds, and have something that can be shared only in one room. Let's defeat it with the spirit. Spirit is above time and above place. So let's prove it. Let's have the next hour or so to unify in a sense that only being denied of the privilege of freedom and this liberty that we have taken for granted just a few months ago, to I don't know, to enforce it, to enforce this liberty back to its powers. This is something that I've been thinking about recently in this obey to isolate. Us authors, us writers, and lovers of literature, not only those who create it, but also those who consume it, we take isolation not to be such a harsh punishment. We we devote ourselves to isolation in a sense of meditation, in a sense of deepening thought into literature. So now that we have taken the grant to choose this choice that we make and practice, now we went back the right to decide when and where and how we want to detach ourselves from reality and deep into those imaginary worlds that we create and we consume, and to go back and forth from reality to fantasy as we know it, and not as we uh, forced into. Which is the side of the 12 program. Ali,
You there? Yep.
are we going to follow the chat?
No.
Just instruct me.
Okay. So no, you're going to talk about the topic, and then afterwards I will facilitate the discussion. Don't worry about the chat.
Okay, thank you so much. So if we have all the rivers to be hinted in this title, Literature and Censorship, you can assume that it relates to the decision made by the Ministry of Education in Israel in the very first day of 2016, to ban my novel from the curriculum for Israeli high schools by, thank you so much. I can't avoid reading the chat saying that it's a wonderfully written story. Thank you so much. It tells the story of two young Middle Easterns, one very charming Palestinian artist coming from Hebron, Ramallah to New York via the High Institute of Arts in Baghdad, where he learned to practice his paintings. And the other is the Israeli academic scholar Liat, who arrives from Tel Aviv to New York. And then in some fall afternoon, they get to, in downtown Manhattan, they get to be introduced one to another. And then they have a whole winter to explore and to learn in the circumstances that only a New York arena can provide to Middle Easterns, to have an equal ground beneath their feet, and this liberty to really know each other, to really explore not only the other's identity, but also themselves reflected in that identity, to learn about how much the conflict that they have known from their day one had molded their point of views, their personalities, their choices made by in their life, and perhaps not only their heart wishes, but also their greatest fears among stereotypes and so many obstacles that stand between these two lovers in their ways to really know each other. This winter leads to the return one back to his tribe. Helmy goes back to Ramallah, Liat goes back to Tel Aviv. He visits his family for the summer. She goes back home. And this book that was announced by the Ministry of Education, and I quote because it's so ridiculously justifying the choice to ban the book from the curriculum for the reason that the argument was stated by this pedagogical committee, saying that the book is dangerous to the Jewish identity of the young readers because it might encourage them to assimilate with the non-Jewish citizens of the country. End of quote. End of absolutely absurd, ridiculous, outraging argument. And this is the very first time Israel had have this event, this travesty of banning a book from a curriculum. This was made under the head of the Ministry of Education, Naftali Bennett, whose his religious right-wing point of view had created this atmosphere in the Ministry of Education. And he wasn't satisfied with only the banning of the book, but also attacking me personally to justify how much reason this stupid act or ridiculous act to ban a book from the Israeli readership was become to be known, because Israelis are so shaped and designed by the freedom of thought and the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression that so many Israelis were standing right behind my back and turning my work of art into a symbol of the threat of free expression in Israel. So when he had to justify this act of banning, he was attacking me personally, and I was going through a turmoil of this political scandal that, being an author, I could never ever expect that writing this delicate love story would make me somehow in the midst of storm that all Israel is going to be involved with. Being an author, you don't consider that you'll ever be opening news editions or having the headlines of newspapers, or persecution in general. I mean, I could never expect so many of the happenings that resulted from this decision. So let me go back to literature, or let me focus more about the aspect of censorship led by your mark, Ali.
Well,
What is
let me
appealing?
right. Let me ask you a few questions about the book, and then we'll go to the issues at large. So the main characters are Liat and is it Helmy or Hilmy?
Helmy, yes.
Hilmy, and they meet in New York City in the Village, correct? So why did you choose for them to meet in New York, and why the Village?
Oh, it's it's my favorite area in New York. I was spending more than a year in New York, exactly in 2002, and I'm an expert in knowing all the bits and pieces and all the corners, the street corners, and all the atmospheres, and not that I was satisfied with only my memories. I went through research and had explored it with my feet as well, visiting. But I could feel that having myself convinced with the sites that I'm describing makes me more ensure that I can convince my reader of me knowing what I'm telling about. So I did have a very direct inspiration by a young man that I met right there in downtown Manhattan in the Village when I was living in New York in 2002. So Hassan Hourani was the name of the artist that I was involved with. And the ending of the book is the reason the book was written, because it's a love story set for him. And it's a dialogue that I maintained by those 6 years of writing the book. I wanted everyone to fall in love with him, everyone to share this intimate, meaningful, so expanding dialogue that we were having. Being born and raised under these circumstances of the conflict, you have so much of your free thought being nationalized, so much of your personal instinct being taken by this landscape of being raised under the occupation or under this military frame of nationhood. So by coming across somehow a reflection of myself as a man in New York, a Palestinian somehow twinship of us, and seeing eye to eye in so many various fields, and having the same kind of temperament, humor, instinct, curiosity, and having a chance to share this intimate feeling that we can affiliate one another's very personal experiences that we were going through in from the two sides of the mirror, the two sides of times, and perhaps by this friendship, by this love, by this understanding of the fate that we share, we can formulate a very, very, very private, very specific kind of a peace treaty that we two phrase and perhaps redeem ourselves from this new suffocating sack of being part of a nation, part of a religion, being very particular too. And this experience, this very unique experience that we were going through in the winter of 2002, I was adapting with my imagination into the novel known as All the Rivers.
Right. So what's interesting to me, though, is that your story, for biographical reasons, takes place in New York, and because you love New York, takes place in New York. I understand that Irvine was the second choice in the location, which we appreciate from Irvine. So thank you. But it takes place in New York, and but you're not the first Israeli author to write about a relationship between a Jewish Israeli and a Palestinian. I mean, Aleph Bet Yehoshua wrote The Lover, but your book has to take place, this relationship has to take place outside of New York. I mean, outside of Israel. It takes place in New York. His takes place in Israel. So there's a difference there. But so in other words, the characters have to meet outside of the land of Israel to have the relationship, right?
I thank you so much for mentioning The Lover by A.B. Yehoshua, who is my teacher. I consider him to be my teacher. Reading him as a young adult, I was somehow became an author by reading his novels. And in The Lover, we see by religious relationship, but they're both citizens of Israel. The Arab boy and the Arab girl in The Lover are both living within the 67 line, and they speak both Hebrew, and they share the same liberties and privileges of being an Israeli citizen. The difference between Helmy and Liat and Dafi and Naim, who are the young couple in The Lover, is not only that they meet away from home. My characters are not sharing a language, because they have to use English to communicate. They're not speaking the same language, Arab and Hebrew, and they're not sharing the experience of democracy. Helmy is being raised in Ramallah, what makes him to be an occupied entity, as an occupied person from day one. And Liat enjoys not only the fruits of democracy, but also she served in the army, and their clash in New York is very much different, and they're politically aware. And this is 2002 when they meet, and the characters in The Lover, they meet in early 70s in Haifa, and I can only quote A.B. Yehoshua when he was asked how come All the Rivers was banned by the Israeli Ministry of Education, and The Lover is being educated and being actually a book that we read in the Israeli curriculum for high school's exams. And his answer was saying that it's not so much that my book is provocative or subversive or perhaps encourage into assimilation, as those arguments in the report by the Ministry of Education were stating. It's the Israel that had changed so much. It's the Israel surrounding these two books has changed, because in late 70s when The Lover was published, and 2014 when All the Rivers was published, it was a very much a different of the Israel surrounding these two love stories. And I take his explanation to be the most accurate, the most coherent to the nationalistic wave that we're in the midst of. The difference between the freedom of thought and the freedom of expression that was taken for granted in the much younger Israel than we have in the second end of the decade of the first millennium, of the second millennium. I mean,
did just to change a little bit, tell us a little bit about why you chose the names Liat and Helmy as the protagonist names. So is there a particular reason?
Yeah, sure, of course. There's always a reason. We spend so much time in deep concern of every choice of word and every choice of expression. This is what makes writing literature so satisfying. This okay. So the choice to name Hilmi was that I wanted the chet to be included. I wanted the dreamy. It means
Cologne, right?
my dream in Hebrew, in Arabic. So I wanted the dreamy quality of Hilmi to be within his name. And Liat has a meaning in Hebrew that I needed Hilmi's brother to ask about when they meet for the very first night, the evening that they share dinner. So he's going to ask her what the meaning of your name has. And she says that Li, which is for me, and At, which means you, uh, and he's going to be compelled with the answer and to have his immediate interpretation by his sight that interprets everything of Israelis to be imperialist, that this meaning of the name, you are mine, to be taken politically, because he's a politically obsessed character in the book.
Okay. So the book comes out. I don't know the timing of when, how long it took for it to come out and then get banned. I assume when it got banned, or whatever we call it, because I think the issue...
18 months exactly.
So I assume, but as soon as it became known it got banned, that readership went up, right? Because that's usually what happens.
Oh yes, I had so many Israelis to support me by skyrocketing the numbers of copies that were sold by then, and the records that were broke in the first 72 hours of the publishing of the report by the Ministry of Education had caused all the books to be emptied from the bookshelves.
So banning is good for sales.
Yes, but I have to say that people find a very much of a sense of accomplishment in the minority protesting by raising the sales, and I understand this. And there is a very precise quote by Federico Fellini, the Italian director, says that every censorship, it's an advertising campaign sponsored by the government, which makes it very ironic and very absolutely true that the censorship can be answered only by promoting the art of work. But this is such a bitter result of having this attack of politicians, ruthless politicians, on artists. I was haunted by the terrorist presentation of the right-wing bullies that were not only attacking me over Facebook and Twitter and by web. They were signaled by Naftali Bennett, who is now being the new star of Israeli politics, to be announced as the new potential option after Netanyahu days are over. And this ruthless politician who could not bear the criticism he was showered with by the liberal Israelis, that was actually signaling in the Israeli main news TV, saying that I am the enemy of the nation. And I had bullies waiting outside my door, ready to punch me in the face. And I had Israelis who were obeying his signals to spit me in the street. So there, I mean, I'm ready to trade those tons of copies that I sold for the 3 months that I didn't sleep because of this silhouette of those bullies being printed in the hallway of my apartment in Tel Aviv. So it's not that this was only this nice storytelling, that once they censorship your work of art, you get to be number one on best-selling list. It also comes with huge disgrace of how easily people are being manipulated with people of power, by people of power, and how they cannot avoid the chance to use artists as perhaps elements to make themselves more popular in their electorate, and using fake news and using all those lies, saying that I was describing the Israeli soldiers as war criminals, as sadists. This politician could not eliminate any obstacle between him and I mean, he could not avoid any chance of attacking me. And by 4 years had gone by now since the banning and this attack. Yes, thank you, Natalie. I'll be getting to Gal Gadot because it's a very much nicer element of the fate of my work.
Before you go to where we are today, because that's my next question, what has happened in between the banning and the unbanning, I understand. But in reading about this, and this is what bothers me more, is that I understand enough. I understand
just to say that this is also fake news. The book was never unbanned from the curriculum. There is, I mean, when I get to America, when flights were available, and I meet my readership in America, I get to see how much of the work of Naftali Bennett and his advisors had reached. So I have not only right-wing religious Jews approaching me, but also all these BDS activists. And this is a very unique mixture of both very left attacks that I enjoy and very right-wing attacks that I get to be granted with. So the book was never unbanned. It was kept to be considered dangerous to the young readership in Israel.
But what I was going to say is, my understanding is that Naftali Bennett and the people who criticized you actually never read the book. That's what I've read, which happens a lot in many countries where people criticize and attack artists and so on, but they haven't read the book, watched the film. Someone just
I doubt if this person ever reads a book, except those I mean, it's not an avid reader that I have lost before me having my work being so viciously attacked, and not after that. This person is not. I wasn't expecting him to enjoy delicate work of art. And he's not the reader I have in mind when I invest so much of my efforts to create a structure of a story. I'm not sorry for losing him as a reader.
So years have passed. So are people still?
But you see, my rage is still very present.
Yes. No. Yeah. We're enjoying it. Thank you. This is a very safe space.
I have a special vein popping in my forehead when they say you should thank him for banning your book. So I'm not thankful for him to attack me personally, and I will never shake his hand, although he had tried to come up with various times that we will have the circumstances to somehow, how do you say, reconcile? No, never in a lifetime. Go and look for other photo ops to gain more people to vote for you than myself shaking your hands or somehow I don't know being peaceful about this choice set of choices that he has made.
So it's still raw for you, but where is it? Do people still recognize you? Do you still get on the streets when you're walking, whether it's Tel Aviv or I don't know if you go to other parts of Israel, do you get people showing up to bring this issue up in your face, or has that kind of passed because there's new?
It's funny because thank you for mentioning the backlash, because the backlash of not only that the book was found to be dangerous, it was also turned into somehow of a forbidden fruit. And I get so many letters from readers who are reading it secretively, and they write me indiscreet and saying, not only that this book is not dangerous for my Jewish identity, I'm a religious Jew, women and men are writing, this is a book that is soaked with love for humans and love for this place, and such a Zionist work of art, in a sense that it's very honoring for the rights of Palestinians to enjoy their nationhoods, frame of nationhood, as much as us, but is so justified with the reason why there should be a Jewish land and Jewish life in the Middle East that is enjoying not only to have Jewish sovereignty, in a sense that we control our fate and our future, political frame of life.
But do you still feel harassment because of this, or has everybody else moved on?
I think everyone has moved on, because so many of them have accepted the way it's been formulated by Wikipedia. Wikipedia is now history being written, and people, you cannot fight with it. You cannot argue. People are saying, but this is how it's written on Wikipedia. It's being told that you compare the IDF army to the Hamas organization, and you say it's the same. And what can you say about it except for, this is not what I wrote. This is what this unbearable politician was saying, and this is how it's being quoted on Wikipedia. And what can I say? I'm a fiction writer. I'm not so much of a powerful person as he is. So I think everyone has moved on. Myself, I've moved on as well. But I can say that I was inspired by this to write now a mini series for the Israeli cable TV about fake news, about the fine line between truth and manipulated interests, that adopting it by the interests of very powerful people.
Can you tell us about this new show and when it's going to be on? And
oh, it's being written at the moment, and it will take a while until you've been exposed to it. I hope that it will be produced, because this is another major difference between writing scripts and writing books. You can never be sure that it's going to turn into something. You need so much of people's will to make your work being shown. And by writing novels, you can be more peaceful, knowing that you create not only the blueprint of the structure, but the structure itself.
Natalie Swit asks about the film adaptation. So is there a film adaptation on this book?
The script is being written by Hollywood scriptwriter, and it's being held by Gal Gadot, who had bought the rights of the screening of the book, turning it into a film. And I met her once, and I can witness that she's as adorable and as fantastic as she seems on TV hosting shows. She's a very, very realistic and at the same time inspiring person. And she found my book to be a project that she wants to involved with in producing and starring, and I got only starstruck. And there is something that I can quote from my meeting with her, because when I was sitting down with her and saying, Gal, can you tell me what this book is about? Can you tell me what's the reason you chose this book to be your next project? And she was thinking, and I was wondering what would be the main reason she chose this book. And she said, I think the book more than anything is about longing home, about being homesick. And I was so relieved when I got this answer from her, because I do agree that this portrait of Israeliness that I was painting via these two characters, the Palestinian Helmy and the Israeli Liat, was somehow my self-portrait as an Israeli, was as this current time Israeliness, trying to say something about homeland and exile, about being belonged and being away from home, about what it is to be, you know, being, you need to step outside of the contour of your identity to observe it from the outside, to see it as a fish out of the water. Because while swimming within the homeland, you don't question having a homeland. You have to go away from home to appreciate having a homeland, and to appreciate having your ID card being taken for granted for so many years, to have your sovereign life to be taken so obviously. As Israelis who were born into established Israel, we never ask what it is to be stateless, what it is to be living in exile and not having a place that you belong to, that you are master, you're the landlord, you have all the keys for all the locks, not only for rights and privileges, but also for the deep understanding of the culture. And having Judaism to be hyphenated with Israeli modern democratic life, it's something that you have to appreciate, to reevaluate. It's only being away from home that you get to question it and to be answered. And again, there is the physical element of being away from home. That is the body that relates to the climate of the North American humid cold, this frost that us Middle Eastern we don't understand. But perhaps being Californians, you know what I mean when I describe the New York harsh winter to be such an attack on the survival instinct of my characters, that they feel their sun is their homeland. They miss home by missing the sun, the sunlight, this power of warmth that we as Israelis and Palestinians, we identify ourselves with the sun.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and whether you knew, for example, that you were going to be a writer? Or did that evolve later in life? But first, a little about your background and then about being a writer.
Great. I was, thank you. I was born in Kfar Saba, which is 30 miles north of Tel Aviv. And I was raised by two newcomers, new Israelis, immigrated from Iran. My heritage Iranian, grandfather and grandfather's mothers are those I credit my career, because I wrote my first novel about my grandma and her memory from being an 11 years old Iranian kid. And I mixed it with my imagination and created my first novel that is titled Persian Bride. I followed it with Strand of 1,000 Pearls, who goes through the generation of my mother and my aunts. And I can say that my beginning as an author in this early age of 21, I wrote my first novel just right after being released from the Israeli army, has to do with the reason I was expelled from the Israeli army. I was serving as a reporter in the Army's magazine. And there, when I was equipped to be a journalist, I wasn't following so much the rules or the commands by the commanders in the magazine, in the unit, to write about facts. To make a long story short, I got expelled from the Israeli Army's magazine because of me interviewing for more than a year interviewees that were not exist in real life. They were in my imagination. I was writing down interviews with people who I had fictionalized. I fabricated a series of interviews with non-existent people, and this is why they found it to be a very, 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 and I agree, very unfair thing to do to my editors, who were trusting that I am writing truth. But this is where I found out of my fictitious voice. Can I say fictitious or fictional? That I wasn't preparing myself to write fiction, but by this experience, I revealed my destiny, perhaps, of writing stories better than writing journals, or that I'm not a journalist. I am a storyteller.
So, when you read current Israeli fiction, who are you reading, and who should we be reading? Obviously,
Wendy
our
has
group
mentioned Wendy mentions the New York Times writer who was fired and also expelled, and very much how do you say it when there's somebody who is being sent away from becoming the dark prince of journalism by ostracized, like being punished with isolation. It's true. I can be only excused by this young age that I was at, being 18, 19, and also because I was in a different kind of I had a readership of soldiers, not the New York Times readership. It's there's a big difference, but it's not excuse. But there's no excuse for not being honest with your readership once it's a paper and not a book.
So what I was asking was, aside from our group now having to go to buy all your books and read them, particularly the one we're talking about, what books are you reading, or authors do you read in Israel that you recommend for our group?
I must start with the book I'm rereading now, and it's not an Israeli. And to be honest, I have Can you read it, or is it because it's a mirror image? You cannot. You can guess. You can guess by the stand.
Yes. It's the plot against well, it's Negative America, I can see, and it's Philip Roth, but it says Philip Roth.
Yes, Bibiuk, exactly. It's
Hakamanya,
The Plot Against America by Philip Roth that I find to be most dear voice to me as a lover of literature, and I consider him to be one of the giants. Um, and this book is it's so relevant to nowadays. Not it could be the reason that they turned it into a miniseries at HBO, but also, yeah, excellent one, true. But I guess it's relevant for times that we feel there's a misusage of democracy and the democratic structure to attack it from within in order to change the manners of life that we consider ourselves to be our identity, as liberals, as thinkers, as observers, as people who wish for the best for the world, and not only for those who were privileged with more fortunes.
Do you have any particular Israeli writers that?
Oh yeah, I have many of them. I consider David Grossman and A.B. Yoshua and Amos Oz and Meir Shalev and Sami Michael. I consider them to be my teachers, my big brothers, my fathers. We don't have many feminist ladies becoming authors in Israeli forward generations. But I can mention Ronit Matalon, who was a very unique voice in the Mizrahi identity being evolved. And the names, the male authors that I mentioned, you probably know.
Did these authors, by the way, did these authors reach out to you in the wake of the whole issue with the book being banned? I mean, do you have a working relationship with them? Do they interact with you?
Sure. David Grossman had read he does read my drafts, and he's a good friend, and I consider him to be if you haven't read the Inner Grammar book, leave every book that you have in mind and read this one. Forget about all the rivers. Go read the Inner Grammar book. This is one of the picks of literature, for surely Israeli and I think internationally too. But of course, there were like bodyguards surrounding me when the scandal was happening. I got calls from A.B. Yoshua a few times a day saying, Dorit, you are not alone. We are with you. You can be sure that we are writing and being interviewed and being at every chance that we have. We publish of how much the attack on you is the attack on us, and we will not abandon you because now it's your book that is being expelled or being criticized in such a violent way. And this is not only your book that is being banned. The next one is going to be ours. So it's not your war to fight by your own. And if it wasn't for them, and if it wasn't for so many Israelis, so many liberal Israelis who were taking pictures with all the rivers and tweeting about how much they support me and all the rivers. And if it wasn't for so many teachers, Israeli teachers and Israeli principals of schools that were buying the book in 100 copies and sending it out, and libraries that were saying this book is not only that it shouldn't be expelled, it should be read. And they were recommending it over and over in the radio and TV and everywhere that they had the chance to, in order to protest this audacious act by the government to tell the Israeli readership what to read and what not to read. And this is perhaps a chance to understand that Israelis are so formed and so shaped by the spirit of democracy that if there's a hope by this administration to twist the instinct of us to express ourselves freely and to behave according to our instinct, they can their aim is going to be defeated of how much Israelis identify themselves with the freedom of expression.
Nicely put, nicely said, and a good thing for us to hear about Israeli society in general. What about the other side? Did you get any input about the book from the Palestinian side, positive or negative?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I do. I get responses from the Palestinian diaspora. I get responses, wonderful letters from Palestinians from the West Bank and from Gaza. And this is most meaningful for me. And because I never took the position of writing about the Palestinian consciousness from to take over it and write it as if I am a Palestinian. I took the chance to describe it from the outside through the eyes of the Israeli character. And to get letters from Palestinians who say that I accurately formed the young nowadays Palestinian consciousness in a way that it describes them. And even someone had paraphrased Baudelaire saying, not Baudelaire, Plover, who was saying, Madame Bovary is me, Madame Bovary c'est moi. He was writing me, Helmy Nasser, your character is me. It is you described me by describing him. And this had also the personal reward for me that I had aimed so much to commemorate my friend with a fictional character and to give him life and to have everyone fall in love with him. But also my wish as an author to write authentically. And even when I describe the other, I use the same brushes that I use to paint my own self-portrait via Liat. I use those delicate colors to describe Helmy, who is not myself, but in a way a reflection of Hassan, a reflection of my wish to know the other from within. And if to somehow wrap it up, the thing about literature and censorship through the case of All the Rivers being banned, I think the reason it was found to be dangerous to the Jewish identity of the young readers in Israel is not because it encourages assimilation, as they stated in the report. I think it's because it's human. I think it's because it's humanistic. I think because it offers the Israeli young readers who are swept with so much national one-sided storytelling, convincing them with the rationalities that Israelis are being intoxicated with, to offer them a new point of view of what this Palestinian demon or unseen character that this administration for more than a decade are doing so much in their power to describe them as ignorant, as being fanatics, as being all blackened with Islamic powers. They are secular, rational, funny, easygoing Palestinians in the West Bank. Not only these demons that that the Israeli government are trying to convince young soldiers to be. that they're being sent to the army thinking one-minded. And this book offers somehow a more down-to-earth, more relatable kind of Palestinian, somebody you can have an intellectual talk with. You can enjoy an evening of smoking weed and drinking alcohol and having a very funny, interesting, easygoing time with, hang out with in New York City, and this relatability is what they found to be threatening. Not because it's encouraged assimilation, it's because it's very much alike us Israelis. They found these similarities that my characters acknowledge of one another to be threatening. Because once you find the enemy to be human and to be so much like you, what do you need the conflict going on for? It raises question of how divided we are for nothing, of how self-intoxicating with our rationalities for so many generation and being clamped or fortified with our reasoning to be at least questioned, okay? And to drop one element of this assimilation terminology that is so much not Israeli. It's so diasporic. It has so much to do with the life before Israel was reestablished 72 years ago. It's ridiculous.
So,
we don't have it to be an issue here.
Let me wrap up with three quick ones. Number one, what happened to Hassan? You said he passed away.
At the same way Helmy had lost his life. Yes.
Okay. Number two, people have asked, why do you have behind you something on the wall that's got a blanket over it?
It's just a very provisoric way of hanging a curtain on.
Oh, okay. We thought you were hiding. We thought you were hiding some provocative image.
If it was
Edward would laugh at us trying to see.
If it was anything that I'm hiding, it's my notes. Okay. Yes, it's my shell.
And then the last question is: did you have any clue that this book would throw you into this tumult and maybe change or direct your life in a different way, or were you kind of clueless in that regard?
I wasn't clueless that I'm writing a political text, and I wasn't clueless about how much I am driven to formulate a novel that would be a reflection of my Israeli identity, how much I need it to outline the Israeli being that I am. But I am such a coward that if I have known during the 6 years of writing this novel that this fate of what I'm writing is going to be the way the outcome was, I would be paralyzed. I wouldn't have the courage to go into this ring of fire, because it had broken so much of what I considered to be the result of writing a novel. Because usually you get to be, reviewed, read, to enjoy the compliment and to enjoy the track of translation and readerships overseas, and to go to your next project and not having your book that is such a delicate motivation, the wishful hope by writing a novel is to be precise, is to be to redeem your day from, or your experiences from banality, to uplift your memory with to emerge from the daily life, and to save yourself from chaos by beauty. You don't expect it to be turned into a symbol. You don't expect your novel to be turned into a political symbol, and yourself to a political. You know how many offers I got to participate as a member of the Israeli parliament in the past 3 rounds of elections that we were having last year. I was having 4 parties offering me a very high position in their lists running for the parliament, and I could become 3 times a member of the Israeli politics as we speak now. Thank God that I am a coward and my manners of life are so hesitative, and that I'm such a dreamy like person that I obviously refuse to these offers. But since we're going now to a 4th round, probably in less than 2 years, in the midst of pandemic, I cannot be more hopeful. You know that the Israeli anthem is Hatikva, the hope. Jews for 2,000 years being stateless, they were hoping to go back to their ancestors' homeland. And here we are back into this crazy little ghetto in the Middle East. And we have our community, the Jewish community, being ran by the most unresponsible heads of our country. It makes you feel so hopeless that you have to encourage yourself with hope. You have to encourage your community with hope. And I've been demonstrating 3 times a week against this government in the past summer. And I've been walking with boards against our prime minister, and I was standing on those platforms yelling into microphones that I cannot hide my left-wing position, but it had gone far beyond right and left nowadays. It's gone to being functional. It's going to be responsible. It's going to be honest, and taking care of the future of so many Israelis. My nephews and nieces are being neglected by the Ministry of Education. So many Israelis who are being isolated at home and lockdown have no hope financially. I mean, it's a chaos around this little study that I'm conversing you from. A chaos is being held in Israel.
Well, when we promise everyone to dig deeper, you know, we do dig
You
deeper.
asked for complexities.
I did.
I
yes.
cannot deny that complexity is my attraction. If it's not complex enough, if it's simple, I don't feel like I can relate to it. Simplicity somehow, it's my aim, but I don't find it to be my reflection. Where you find the diversity, where you find a riddle, when there's a mystery, I find that it's somehow I feel somehow at home, and perhaps going back to peaceful life. It's not the hope, but I cannot deny of how crazy this little place is, and I hope that by the time you can visit us and tour around Israel, you will be finding an Israel that has healed from many complexities with this chance that pandemics has. Corona is a chance to heal, it, while this immune system is being crashed.
Compromised. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your story and talking about your books and your challenges and things you see in Israeli society that are challenging.
I must say that I'm very much encouraged by your interest in us. I mean, you have your own trouble.
We have no troubles in this country. What are you talking about?
And
But-
I am tomorrow night. I have a Zoom book club with ladies in New Jersey, and ladies in Nahariya, which is a city in the north of Israel. They're combined, and I am very much used to meeting Jewish American students and communities, and I am so appreciative of this affiliation, and I feel so close. And I hope more Israelis would be appreciative of this unique, special value of friendship that we share. And to begin with, it's the acknowledgement that it is, and it's gone through several generations by now. I think it should be more educated, that the young Israelis will be more educated with this bond in order to appreciate it and to value it and to maintain it. As I feel that I am informed with and experienced with.
It's a unique time because now we all have this Zoom technology and we can do it. Whereas before we were very far away, and even though we're not there today with you in Tel Aviv, as we were supposed to be, that we can be with you online. It's not as good, but it's definitely better than the alternative. People have asked, can they join the book group tomorrow night? Maybe if you email me.
I think we're kind of packed, because what we're gonna discuss tomorrow is the plot against America, and I'm really curious to hear you guys. I mean, in a sense, that to hear Americans, Jewish Americans, just a week ahead of the election day, and to see the parallel reactions of the characters Roth is writing about, and so much to discuss. I think we have a full house for tomorrow, but I can check out if we can create perhaps twinships between. This is all arranged by the Jewish agency, Asukhnut Hayudit, this book club. So perhaps we can create another or more.
Well, we'll email. So I wanted to thank everybody to this afternoon. In just about an hour and a half or hour and 15 minutes, we go down to the city of Yerucham to see what development towns look like now and meet some of the people that live there. It's another part of Israel's story, and I think we're going to meet Debbie Goldman Golan, who is an incredible worker and volunteer down in Yerucham. I'll tell you more about why we're going to Yerucham when we start the meeting, but I wanted to thank Dorit for being with us, and thank you all for spending time with us. I hope to take a break, change your outfits, and have some refreshments. We'll see you in about an hour and 15.
Ali, I'm so thankful. Thank you so much, Eli. Thank you so much, everyone, for your listening. I wish we can go on for an hour and so more. And Hatikva, don't forget the hope. Don't forget our transatlantic spirit, the human spirit that goes beyond all the troubles, all the times.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. See you in a bit.
Good night. Good
Bye.
night from here. Good day for you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.